You've got to have a passion for what you're doing. I have a huge passion for supporting families. I have a huge passion for my property networking group. And I'm really passionate about commercial. I just don't have enough hours in the day.
What you've created is quite unique. I'm not aware of many others that are sort of similar to you.
It is a really good networking group. We've got over 1,000 people in the Facebook group, 500 in the WhatsApp group. So it has grown. I've rehoused, I think I'm up to about 60 families so far, something like that. Amazing. And that's a landlord where they're willing to accept a family and receive universal credit. I moved a family in the 27th of December 2023. It was a mum with 3 children. She was in temporary accommodation. So I'm sitting on the stairs with this little boy. He's like 12 years old. His mum's moving a couple of bits and bobs in. I said, "What do you want for Christmas?" He said, "You've just got me all I want for Christmas. Got a new house." And I approached them about, did they want to renegotiate the lease? And they went, "No, we're off." I'm like, "Great." Now I've got no tenants and I've got a property I've just paid 140,000 for.
Mark your calendars. The 2025 Property Developer Show is coming to 5 major cities across the UK, bringing the best service providers and developers together under one roof. On the 5th of March, we kick off in the first show at Milton Keynes, followed by Bristol on the 30th of April, Birmingham on the 16th of July, and then we're heading north to Manchester on the 10th of September, followed by our final stop in Newcastle upon Tyne on the 15th of October. Don't miss out on connecting with other developers, service providers, and industry leaders. Visit propertydevelopershow.co.uk to book your free ticket today. Welcome to another episode of the Property Developer Show, the podcast. Today, I'm joined by Mark Burrows, who is a networking host at MING, obviously Midlands Investor Network. Missed something out there? Group.
Midland Investor Networking Group.
Also works with the homeless and considers himself a commercial investor, not a developer. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
Absolute pleasure. So for, I guess, the guests, the podcast listeners that don't know who Mark is, do you want to give a quick overview as to who Mark is, how you got into property and what you're up to now?
Yeah, accidental landlord. I think a lot of us say that, to be fair.
Yeah.
About 8 years ago, I was in the insulation world. So I came from the eco world, insulation, cavities, lofts and all that sort of stuff. And hit a bit of a brick wall, came to an end quite abruptly. I'd got some capital to invest, and I got involved in a property training company. Paid quite a lot of money to jump on there. Did a little bit, did some education. As I said, became an accidental landlord, but then very quickly realised that it wasn't quite as simple as what I thought it'd be. But it was the shiny penny, all the promises of the golden dream, and all that sort of stuff. So that's kind of where it started about 8 years ago. Nice. What I did then on the back of that, if we then quite fast forward onto the networking event, because of what I'd done and the amount of money that I'd spent on it, I thought there's got to be people out there that just want to connect and talk to each other. I was brand new to it. I arranged for a few people just on Facebook, social media to get together. Ended up with about 10 or 11 people just having a chat around a table. Thought might be some legs in this. So that's where it all started.
Nice, amazing. So kind of off the back of your own kind of need, that's that entrepreneurial spirit, isn't it? You know, you've got a problem. What is the problem? How do I fix that problem? And you obviously created that through MING. And I think what you've created is quite unique. I'm not aware of many others that are sort of similar to you, that you run a day event that's about connecting people, not just in the evening, but it's more about an educational piece with the speakers that you've got, the people that are sponsoring the event. Obviously, people can meet good service providers. It's kind of a bit more of a, if you're full-time in property or you're wanting to edge towards going full-time in property, it's a bit more of a high-level networking event. That's what I get from it.
Yeah, it is now. I tested it. I'm still testing now to this day. I still test after 8 years, almost 8 years. When I first started out doing it, I did run a daytime and I ran an evening, and I used to watch and see what happened. I was getting more people of an evening than I was in the day. But there were so many evening networking events, lots and lots of new people, and there's nothing wrong with that. Everybody needs to be educated, or everyone needs to learn about how to get into property, or if that's your forte and that's what you want to do. But where I was at with it, I just wanted to test and see what was going on. The numbers were there. They were better of nights than they were in the day. But the people that I had when they came to the daytime events, I only ran this for around about 3-4 months or so. But when I'd done it and I ran the daytime, I just found that the people that were coming during the day were heavily involved in property already. So the conversations were stronger. And that's where I stuck to the daytime.
makes sense. Yeah. In terms of like setting up the networking event, then I guess so. I suppose I'm asking this on behalf of people that might be thinking about starting a networking group.
Yeah.
What's kind of the building blocks to creating a successful networking?
First of all, I would encourage people to do it.
You would?
I would encourage people to do it. Yeah. Anybody and everybody. I mean, everyone's got an opportunity to do something like that. Let me put this right. I didn't set out to create what I've created.
Mm-hmm.
And I say that, I'm not being flippant about it. It is a really good networking group. We've got over 1,000 people in the Facebook group, 500 in the WhatsApp group. So it has grown, but it was never intended for that in the first place. It was just there set up as I said, I was damaged at the beginning and it cost me a lot of money to do it. The foundations for the networking event itself is to connect people, to connect as many people. And from connecting people, I find that quite easy to connect people. I've done the wealth dynamics and things, and I've looked at that as a supporter, and I connect people together. I'm very good at that. Mm-hmm. I enjoy that. Probably a little bit too much, to be honest with you. It takes up a lot of my time, or it has done in the past, a lot of my time in connecting the people. But my phone rings all the time. I get emails all the time, to the extent where it kind of took over my day to day. But I really enjoyed it. But yeah, it's good.
So the sort of essence of it then is really about connecting people.
Yeah.
And if you can focus on that from day one, you're going to create what you've created in essence.
Yeah. And off the back of that, like I said, inadvertently, that's what I've created. And off the back of that, opportunities come as well. I like to think that I've got a pretty decent reputation as well. Mm-hmm. People love and trust me, hopefully, as well. Well, we'll see.
Yeah.
They do. I think so. So yeah. That's that's what it is.
Nice. So I find Birmingham quite an interesting place for networking groups. I think it's very collaborative as a city versus, obviously, we ran a show in Birmingham, ran a show in Manchester, and obviously we collaborated on the Birmingham show. You helped promote it and gave you obviously a spot at the show, but Manchester's very much an isolated kind of environment where people are just in their own lane. Whereas I found in Birmingham, people are more open to collaborations. You kind of see similar faces at networking groups. It's kind of a bit more, I suppose, interconnected. Whereas, Manchester's kind of like everyone's in their own separate lanes. Right. Each event, you get separate, different people, and it's kind of a bit segregated in a way.
Interesting.
So I think the Midlands is definitely a great place to have a networking group, just because of that sort of engagement that you get from people that are attending. I find it quite bizarre that there is different types of sort of setups in different cities, but it's been a bit of a learning curve for growing the show.
I also like to at our event, I like to share the other events. So every time, because we run the second Monday of every month during the day, but I think we've probably got, there's about 12 or 13 different events that I'm aware of people that I know personally as well. And I promote their events as well, because we don't no point trying to hold on to it, just share it out there. If you can share the love, the networking takes care of itself after that as well.
Absolutely. I mean, it's that abundance mindset, isn't it? It's, you don't have ownership over networking. It's you can go to one event being MING, another event being Property Developer Show. It doesn't mean that, we should be rivals. It means that we should come together, work together, and, look at how we can grow and develop a better community, a better industry, all the positive stuff that...
And it's good fun as well.
Yeah.
It is good fun.
For extroverts, so for people that like other people.
Yeah, maybe. That's another thing that's done for me as well, because standing at the front of the room, I used to be a bag of nerves. Even now, I get sweaty palms when I'm running now, and we're getting an average of around about 60, 65 people now coming to the daytime events. But even now, when I stand at the front of there, I'm still nervous, which I think is quite healthy. I enjoy it. Keeps you on your toes.
Yeah, definitely. It pushes your comfort zones, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does.
So in terms of like moving to your property investment side of things, I know you're quite heavily involved in the homeless side of things. So do you want to go into more sort of detail around what that is and how you've sort of come to pull what you've pulled together?
Of course. When I first, as I said, when I started 8 years ago, I'd got some capital in the first place. So I went out and bought some properties. I did the usual thing, HMOs, service accommodation, buy-to-lets, did all those with my modest portfolio that I've got in Walsall and Wolverhampton. And that was okay, and it was a good cash flow, and people told me this is what you need to do. So that's how they've been educated. And also as well, I've walked the streets of Wolverhampton for a few years. I don't do it currently, but I've walked the streets of Wolverhampton for a few years, which was where I used to hand out provisions and tents and things. I was heavily involved in stuff like the Red Cross and getting stuff from V Festival and things like that, so old tents and all that sort of thing. And I used to do that, and I did that with Wolverhampton Outreach for a few years. And there was an old golfing friend of mine that knew what I did, knew that I'd gone into property, and he said, you should speak to my brother, Mark. So I had he put me in touch. He's the housing officer for West London Housing Alliance. And it was kind of like the starter for where I was in the property world, because, okay, yeah, I was buying a couple of houses, but they were never really going to do that much, but I was getting an incentive payment. So the way it worked out was I was getting an incentive payment for finding a landlord and then facilitating the move between a tenant moving into the property. Then I would get it wasn't a particularly big incentive fee, but it started me off. Because of what I did with the homeless, it was quite nice. It felt right. So I did that, and fast forward to now, I've rehoused. I think I'm up to about 60 families so far, something like that. Amazing. And that's a landlord where they're willing to accept a family in receive universal credit. Mm-hmm. So I've done that for a few years. The properties that I've got as well, I use, as I said, I use them as HMOs, service accommodation, buy-to-lets. I use them for all those. I'd be a little bit hypocritical if I didn't use them myself. Mm-hmm. So I've had some bad experiences with tenants. Quite a lot of bad experiences with tenants. With students, nothing wrong with it. If you run it properly, I didn't, because I'd got no interest in it. So I always say that if you're not interested in it, you're never going to perform very well. So I didn't like it with students. I wasn't particularly good at it. Service accommodation, same again. Yeah, okay, the numbers are great, but I didn't particularly enjoy it. So what I've ended up doing is I've ended up clearing out my portfolio, and I've moved homeless families in there as well. So that's been good, and it is good. I think what I've done is I kind of like followed my passion with that, because that's what I've done with walking the streets and then finding families. And there's nothing better than having a family moving into a new home when they've come off the streets and they're in temporary accommodation somewhere, and then just moving into somewhere. It's rewarding. If I'll just tell you a quick story, actually, whilst I go off on a tangent, because you'll find this with me that I do. I moved a family in the 27th of December 2023, so last year, and it was a mum with 3 children. She was in temporary accommodation, actually in Wolverhampton, but I moved into permanent accommodation in Birmingham, which was really nice to do. It was a couple of days after Christmas and things like that. So I'm sitting on the stairs with this little boy. He's like 12 years old, sitting on the stairs with him, and his mum's moving a couple of bits and bobs in. I said, "What do you want for Christmas?" He said, "You've just got me all I want for Christmas. I've got a new house." I'm like, well, it gets me going every time with that. So that's like I'm sounding like I'm a bit of a do-gooder. It's just I'm passionate about it, and I really do enjoy it.
Absolutely. So I don't think you're self-gloating at all. I don't think you should discredit yourself in any way, shape or form. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I think it deserves every credit it gets, and you're doing it for the right reasons. It's not necessarily just, you're not doing it for profit, you're doing it for that feel-good factor, which, I think if you understand, if you know, and it's obviously an amazing thing that you're doing. So hats off to you.
Thank you. Yeah, and that's snowballing now, because the more that I've got into it, I kind of had a bit of a mind shift sort of like 12, 18 months ago, where I was a bit frustrated with me. I only actually moved all these families into my own portfolio sort of like 12 months ago. And that was a bit of a mind shift. That was. I didn't know where I was going. Didn't know what I was. I was a bit lost in what I was doing in property. I don't have a passion for property itself. That sounds mad. Bricks and mortar doesn't make that much difference. It's what it brings afterwards and what it can do. Now, what it brings can either bring you profit, huge amounts of profit in developers or wherever it may be. Everyone's got their own forte. What it gives me is it gives me a lot of satisfaction, because I don't do it for nothing. I'm not doing it as a freebie. I'm still making money out of it, but I'm also getting a reward out of it as well at the same time.
Yeah, it's 2 birds, 1 stone, isn't it?
Yeah.
You're providing something that someone needs. But off the back of that, you're incentivized to do it because you've got your own bills to pay and kids to feed, of course.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So in terms of people, I guess, wanting to understand what you've put together in more detail, what if someone, like me, never done it before, how could someone like me get involved in what you've created or what you're part of?
Couple of ways. If you're a landlord that is willing to accept a family in receipt of universal credit, I appreciate that the LHA, local housing allowance rates, are lower than market rent. Then we've got family after family after family looking for homes. But unfortunately, there's a disparity between a market rent and LHA rent, and it's normally 100, 200 quid or something like that. Now, with the space that I'm in, and I know you're in a lot of these spaces yourself as well, it's how much money can you extract from a property, which is fine. But I get some landlords that take it on board and they do it because they like the idea of doing some good with their property at the same time as well. So that's one way that you can do it as well. Another thing, I've got a company now that I've set up with a good friend of mine called Jessica, and we've now set up a company called SureStay Group. And on the back of what I've been doing for the last few years, Jessica approached me and she said, I've got an opportunity here to purchase a block of flats. Would that be of interest to you in what you do with the homeless? So we sat down and we had a coffee and we talked about it and we looked over the numbers. We thought there might be some mileage in this. Let's have a look at it. And on the back of that, if we fast forward ourselves now, we've just purchased our first block of 11 flats in Birmingham. We're just going through the refurb at the moment. We got a private investor. So going back to what you were saying, how could you get involved? We do have a private investor in there. We've got a few private investors, but we've got one particular person that has funded the whole purchase, which, as you know as well, bridging finance is tough, can be expensive, can be a little bit difficult. We'd got the bridge all set up. It was ready to go, but we came across a couple of issues with indemnity and things like that. Get your words out there. So that's another way that with ourselves, with SureStay Group, we're always looking for people, not just for investment, but for people to find blocks of flats as well. But personally, I'm also looking for landlords who would accept a family and receive a universal credit as well.
Makes sense. So in terms of, I guess, the structure of the business, in a sense of the flats that you've purchased, how does that sort of work? So obviously you brought your investor in. Have you brought that into that company that you mentioned, or an SPV?
SPV, yeah.
And then you're renting that to essentially people that are looking for permanent housing?
Yeah, these families, they'll all be on ASTs, or most of them will be on ASTs. Some of them we're going to use for emergency accommodation or temporary accommodation, if you want to call it that. So we'll use half the block for temporary accommodation, and the other half of the block will be used for AST. So there'll be, what we look for is when I look for a landlord, because like I said, there's two sides to what I do. I've got MRB Property, which is my own personal business, where I find landlords that will accept families and they stay as the landlord, and then I facilitate between the two. So I move the families in and help them move. And then with SureStay Group, we're going to become the landlord as well. That's the idea behind it. So, but we always ask for a 2-year AST. They need stability. The last thing we can do is bring a family into a property, put them on a 6-month AST, and then the landlord decides that they've changed their mind and they don't want to sell the property or whatever. So we need to give the families some stability. So that's what we'll be doing at SureStay as well.
Will you be refinancing off the back of?
Yeah, we will. We've got, as I said, we've got a private investor that's funded the purchase. We actually had an investor that put up the deposit for us in the first place. But yes, once we've tenanted it, the numbers, we always, when we do the numbers from the beginning, we always work it out on worst case scenario. Worst case scenario is a LHA rate. It can't drop any lower than an LHA rate. So we worked our numbers based on that, and they work. So once it's full, that's fine. We know that it'll work. We've got no intention of ever selling it. Jessica and I are slightly at difference of opinion on how many families we're going to do. We've agreed on 50 families by the end of 2025. That's what we want to purchase. So I'm under pressure because I'm the one that goes out and finds the sites, and we both identify the investors as well, but we've got bridging and things like that. So yeah.
So in terms of the refinance, then is that onto a social housing product? Or is that just literally straightforward buy to let?
No, it'll just be on a commercial mortgage.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, it'll be on a commercial mortgage. It'll be a multi-unit block.
Mhm.
Is what we're doing it as.
Right. Okay. And then you're sort of, I'm assuming, pulling some value out that you can then reinvest.
Yeah, I mean, we can fetch most of the money out of this first block. I think we might be leaving maybe 40, 50,000 pound in it. We've already spoken to the investor and he said, leave it there. He's not bothered, to be honest. Just leave it where it is. Yeah. You do find that as well. You do find that because when we look for people to invest in our blocks, we're looking for people that are investing in our vision, what we want to do. So ethical investing, if that's what you want to call it.
Yeah.
So you can get all kinds of ridiculous rates out there now, which is all well and good, but our rates aren't that bad. But we're doing it with ethical investment as well at the same time, with a social impact.
Of course, yeah, which is important. Massive importance really, and it's a big need in the sector. And I think it kind of goes against the grain as to what people think of landlords. They think that everyone's parasites and they're all just stealing money. No,
they're not. I've met a lot of really decent people whilst I've been doing this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I you and me both. I mean, everyone that I've had on this podcast that is a landlord is not, a big fat cat in an ivory tower. They are a genuine person that is using property as a vehicle to obviously, increase their wealth, but also provide a solution that is needed in a market. And I mean, it's not like, we're overstocked with properties and rental properties. No. It's quite the opposite, and landlords are a solution to that problem, and what you're doing is a solution to the exact same problem, but probably a bigger problem than just a normal.
Yeah, the problem is huge, but like as I said to you earlier on as well, it's just become a passion, a real big passion. It's property's lonely. It's really, really lonely. You feel like you're on your own. I've got a networking group and I've got lots and lots of people there I can speak to, but it's still lonely when you're sitting in your office on your own, scratching your head, trying to make something stack, trying to find a site, trying to do this, trying to do that. I find it lonely even now. Still find it quite lonely. I'm lucky now that I've got my business partner Jessica as well, because I'm able to bounce ideas off there. I thought I'd want to hold on to the whole thing, but far from it. Yeah. I've always been, I want to hold it, but now with the property networking event as well, it was my baby. It's been running as Mark Burrows for God knows how many years and things like that. But now I've brought on a team. So I've got Vicky, who's my co-host, and I've got Karen, who does all my email marketing and things. I've got a social media team in there as well. So, and it's good to share it all out, and they get a lot of benefit from it as well. Well, I hope they do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, hopefully, yeah. Good still. So I suppose, just jumping back to something that you mentioned that was your responsibility to find the sites, without giving away all your secrets, what's your kind of tack on finding sites, negotiating on sites, for someone that's maybe listening and wanting to find commercial blocks, or maybe someone that can find it on your behalf and obviously watch this episode and pass it over to you?
Yeah, I love that. The more the merrier. Anyone out there that's got any blocks, please approach me. I do use software. I use a couple of different softwares. Nimbus Maps being a good one, Property Filter as well, and they're very, very good. But I also have a VA as well. I use a VA in the Philippines. Create my own Loom videos, explain it to them exactly what I'm looking for, the size of the site, the amount of units that are in there, the square footage. Create all that for them, and then pass it on and let them do the work. And they're very good, to be fair. They're very good. They're not expensive. They're inexpensive. I don't know how that equates over there, but
I think most of them are living like queens and kings, aren't they?
yeah, maybe.
So software, VA. So that basically, I imagine you say, look, here's a software, scrape through this data here. This is how you do this specifically. Pull out everyone that you find within this data and send me the list. Basically.
There's a lot of stock that's on the market as well. A lot of stock out there which you can find. I mean, the Nimbus is good for finding off-market stuff and writing letters, but finding stuff on the market, on the likes of Rightmove and Marketplace and things, that's what my VA does, goes scraping for those. I haven't got the time to go and look for all those kind of things.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, most of the stuff that I've ever bought has been on the open market in some way, shape or form. I've done a handful of off-market stuff, mostly with one landlord. I've bought a few bits off, but I think it's certainly underrated, this whole looking on.
Property sources are great as well.
Yeah,
There are some good
yet
ones.
to do that, but there are definitely some good ones out there that I'm aware of.
Yeah, there are some good ones. I mean, going back to where did I find this block? Jessica found it. Where did you find it? At MING, at my networking event.
Was it? Yeah.
So she found it there. My funding, that came from a networking event again. So my investors from there as well. And the trades that we are about to use, they've all come from there as well. So as I said earlier on, I'd encourage people to just have a go. Just try and do it. Go out there and network. Try and make a difference. That's the thing. Don't try and go in there to try and make money out of it, because you're not really going to make much out of it. But what you will get is you'll make a hell of a lot of contacts.
Yeah, it's about opportunity, isn't it? I suppose, and being at the front of the room, as you've sort of alluded to, that's the vital part of it, because people know every single month you're saying, "I'm Mark. This is what I do," so people know, even if you don't get a chance to speak to you.
I'm not sure how fed up they get of me, because
I've only been one, and I'm not good. No, I'm joking.
I do keep banging the drum.
Yeah, I mean they're great events. I mean, the format's brilliant, and I think anyone, even if they're not Midlands based, I think should go along to one of your events. And,
I try to offer as much value as what I can. And some of the presenters that we've had have been absolutely fantastic. And we do get them from all over the country. We've had one from America. We've had some from Scotland. So we do get them from all over the UK. We've had some really good ones.
So for anyone that, I guess, going back to the original question, like the first question I asked you, so anyone that wants to set up a networking group, really. So the starting points then, I guess, are finding location, understanding who you want to invite along, putting together the event depending on what time of the day. Obviously, you get more people in the evening, but you get better quality during the day. And then go out and market it, I guess.
The people that come with the nighttime, I found that 40 or 50% of the room are new, and they're looking to get into property and looking to get out of their daytime job, which is good. And I'd encourage people to go and do that, and to get some education, and to go and network and go to these networking events of a night time, because they are very, very good. As is slightly different in the fact that if you've got a job, you can't come to MING because we're in the day, unfortunately. The one thing that I did learn, the main learning curve that I had, I think, was for the first 5 years, I would say, it was free to come to MING, because I didn't want to. I thought if I charge people, it's wrong to charge people, because I set the group up because people were charging me. I know this is like thousands of pounds, but they were charging me money to go to these events when you could go for free. So I did that. And I was getting 25, 30 people regularly booking on, but only 10 or 15 people were turning up. And that was really frustrating. So I was getting at least a 50, 60% dropout. What I've learned as I've gone along over the time is to ask the audience what they want, to ask them. So I set up a WhatsApp group about 4 years ago. I asked people, I put polls out there quite often. What do you need? What do you want? What are you looking for? So I asked them about 2 years ago, if I charge for the event, would you come? The answer was yeah. The next question was, where are you all based? Because I'm based in Wolverhampton, and it turned out that 65% of the people are from Birmingham. So I moved. So that was the thing. So make sure that you know where most of your audience are coming from. So I did that as well. And then I said, guest speakers, is it important, yes or no? And it was overwhelming. People wanted guest speakers. So those were the three main things, what I would say that you'd need to get right. Don't do it for nothing. If you do it for nothing, then there's no value in there. You think you're offering value by them coming to a room free of charge, but if you charge them 10, 15, 20 quid, whatever it may be, at least if they've got commitment, there's a chance they're going to turn up. And then as it went along, I then said, one of the questions, what's missing? And they said, well, if you want us between 10 o'clock and 2:30 on a Monday, then we want feeding. So I said, okay, well, you're going to have to pay for it. So I did. So I put lunch on for them. It doesn't put the charge up much at all, but that was another thing. So again, just keep asking the audience, just keep testing it.
Yeah.
And if people want to ask me the question, then I know that you've had Shane on here as well, and Shane's a fantastic networker, really, really good. So I'd highly recommend going to TDN in Birmingham as well.
Yeah.
He's a good mate of mine, so.
Shout out to Shane. I can't remember what episode he is off the top of my head, unfortunately. Go and find his episode.
He comes to mine, and I go to his as well. Again, we reciprocate, and we share each other's love as well too.
Yeah, because he did the, whatever it was, 100 networking groups in a year or something like that, wasn't it?
He did a lot more than that.
Yeah,
that was his target. He went way over it. I think he had 150, by the time he did it. So I'm not like that.
What Shane doesn't know about networking isn't worth knowing, I don't think. So.
Yeah, he's the guru.
For sure. So, but I think it's definitely a useful platform. I mean, I had, before the Property Developer Show, I had Connect Property Network, which was like not similar to, it was like an evening, more like TDN, not quite the same format as TDN. It's more like PIN, if people know Property Investor Network. And that was a great platform for me, added credibility to what I was doing. I was still relatively fresh in the property game, probably 2 years in, connected with more people, sort of built profile, found opportunity, built relationships with people. It was great for, particularly being young in property. People don't sometimes take you serious if they don't know who you are. Your mum and dad in property. I always scout all the time. So it just added that layer of credibility that I wasn't just a kid that didn't know what I was doing.
Yeah.
Well, I didn't know what I was doing, but but yeah, it certainly helped. So I can definitely agree with you that it's definitely worth doing for sure. But it's interesting on the free part as well, because we're obviously the events for us, the Property Developer Show, are free. So if we get 1,000 people register, probably only 35% of that will actually turn up.
Really?
But that's
interesting
because of that commitment piece.
Yeah.
It's and that's 30-35% is what we get about that turn up.
Of your 1,000, so you get 350, 400 people turning up out of 1,000 people.
To register.
Okay.
Yeah. So
that reiterates my point.
Absolutely.
If they've not exchanged, when people give money out, they normally turn up.
Yeah, they're committed, or some they don't want to. It's easy to go, I can't be bothered. It's not cost me anything to go. Whereas, I've got £10 in sunk cost fallacy, they call it, don't they? So if you've invested a bit, you want to continue.
But just keep a good value. You're not looking to make money from it. Well, I'm not looking to make money from it, but it's give them value, and the value is the strength of the room. I feel that personally, because our daytime event, because the strength of the room is really strong. Most people that I've spoken to, and we've got lots of people on testimonials and things, and they say about that the conversations that they have are really strong, and the numbers are there as well. I've built those numbers up over the last sort of 18 months or so. We've built those numbers up. Vicky's been a really good help. Vicky knows everybody.
Yeah, that's good. That always helps.
It does. And also Karen as well. I have to give a really good shout out to Karen as well, Karen Poxon, because she does my email marketing. And when she first jumped on board with me 18 months ago, and I said, I don't know what value you're going to bring, because I can send emails out all day. I've got the list. What can you do? And she said, it's how to nurture them. And it's how to, the timing when you actually send them out and things. And she said, and I said, so how are you going to improve it? She said, I'll reduce your drop-offs. We've now got a drop-off of around about 4%.
Wow, it's amazing.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah. That's really good.
We're having maybe 1 or 2 people that don't turn up.
Well, if you're, that's phenomenal. That's some good numbers. So well done on that front.
Yeah, no, it's good.
So outside of the homeless sort of stuff and MING, do you have any other investments that you're working on, or you've worked on in the past, or within your? Because you said you've got HMO, or you had student lets, you've got HMOs, you've got service accommodation and buy to let. So what kind of formulates into that?
I did. That's what I did before I put the families in there. So I'm not particularly good with tenants because I've got a heart, and I find it quite difficult with tenants if they don't pay the rent and things like that. I can't confront people. I'm not confrontational at all. But before I started in property, I had an installation company for 15, 16 years, and that was just about business. So I like to think that I'm good at business. Residential property, like I said, it doesn't really sit with me that well. So I looked at doing some commercial stuff. Now, I'm not talking about commercial to residential, not converting, because as I just said, residential is not my favorite thing. So I wanted to look at commercial itself. So I'm with an organization called NCRE, who are one of our sponsors as well. I've been with them now for a couple of years, and they are commercial surveyors. They're a team of half a dozen commercial surveyors with an educating arm on there as well. They're very, very low entry as well. And I decided to learn all about commercial because it was business to business kind of thing. So people have an emotional attachment to a residential property because they live in it, or they're tenanted, or whatever it may be. Commercial is very, very different. because it comes down to the numbers. So I thought, well, I'm going to have a look at commercial and see what it is. I'd looked at commercial to residential, but as I said, I didn't. That's kind of like defeating the object. Why do I want to convert something and turn it back into residential? And I don't particularly want to do that. So I just wanted to look straight at commercial. Now they do teach you in commercial resi and commercial and industrial and things. I decided that retail was my way forward. I like retail. Now I've done some training on there, learned lots and lots about it. It's no easier than residential. I don't think it's much easier. It's just different. You have to understand yields as opposed to return on investment. And I put out lots of offers as you do, sent out letters. I actually used Property Filter for. I found a particular site. I was looking at a few properties in a little market town called Market Drayton, not far away from where I used to live in Newport in Shropshire. And there were some really nice properties there, and I thought, well, this is my patch. I wanted to pick a patch. It's most unlike me, because with residential, I'm not like that. With commercial, I've wanted to pick a patch and stick to it. So I wanted to hone in on an area. So I looked at Market Drayton and I liked it, and it was good. So I'd put quite a few offers out on a few properties. But then when I was going around and having a coffee and just asking the people I just didn't get the friendliness about it. The area looked great, the numbers looked okay, but it wasn't particularly friendly, and I couldn't invest in a place where I didn't get a good feel for it. A lot of my stuff is done on gut, and there was a property in Oswestry that came up, and I thought that Oswestry's close to Market Drayton, and it's nowhere near. It's about an hour away. It's a market town in Shropshire, and I thought it was close because it's a market town in Shropshire. So I went and looked at this other one. It was too big for me. It was way out of my depth. I could never afford it. But I went and had a coffee, and everyone was really friendly. So I thought, well, let's have a little look around here. And so I then started contacting agents, started looking at sites, probably put offers in around about 10, 12 properties, something like that, within my first 6 months. And there was one particular one that I liked. It was a couple of shops, and they were tenanted, but they were massively under rented. It was ugly, the ugliest shops you'll ever see. But they were massively under rented. So I thought, well, because of the training that I'd had and what I was learning from NCRE, it was to uplift that value, and by uplifting the value, that would be increase the rent. So it would drive the yield down for people that understand that. So I was buying this property. It was up 196,000, I think it was up at. Now, I managed to get them down to about 165 for the two shops together. But it still didn't work for me. My numbers were 140, but we'd gone as low as 165. So that's where we were at with it. And it just kept on going and kept on going and kept on going. And eventually, what I learned as well is get a survey done on the property and things like that. I didn't make up the report, but the report, you can get a report like a home buyer's report, things like that. If you read a home buyer's report, or if you read a commercial survey, you look at it and you go, oh my goodness, that's falling apart. But it's not. But what I did is I picked out the bones, the bits that I thought, well, this is going to reduce the price. So I sent that back to the agent that I was dealing with. I went, these are the reasons that I can't buy it. My offer is 140,000. That's it. And eventually, to cut a long story short, I got it for the 140.
Nice.
But the one bit that I didn't anticipate was the tenants leaving. So I was buying an income, and I was going to increase their rent to drive the value up. The tenants left, both of them. So I'm there now thinking, I've just bought a property and I've got no tenants.
Was that what sort of led them to leave? Were they always leaving?
No, they were. The one guy was in. He was in a three-year lease. He was in a 5-year lease, but he was coming up to 3 years. So he'd been in it for 2 years, but his business had failed. But he was still paying the rent to the old landlord. So I negotiated with the guy afterwards and said, "Listen, you can't keep going under and keep paying me once I'd bought it. You can't keep paying me. It's not fair." So we agreed a settlement between the two of us. And the other shop as well, it was called Molly's Sweets in Oswestry. Everyone in Oswestry was gutted when it went. Absolutely gutted they were. But anyway, that was, they were coming to the end. I think, their lease had run out. So their lease was, they were holding over. It was like a rolling lease. They were holding over. And I approached them about, did they want to renegotiate the lease? And they went, no, we're off. I'm like, great. Now I've got no tenants and I've got a property I've just paid 140,000 for. So what I did then is I'm really proactive. I didn't want to give this to an agent and say, go and find me 2 new tenants. I thought I need to learn about the area. So I did. So I did all kinds of research on Oswestry, created my own flyers on Canva, put them out on Facebook, put them on Instagram, shoved them on the windows of the 2 shops, went around all the local shops as well, just handing out flyers. And I ended up with about 35, 36 people, something like that, all interested in the 2 shops.
Wow.
So all of a sudden I was in a really strong position. But what the most important thing was, I learned so much about Oswestry by doing that. And I've now got, so my next purchase will be there again. My next commercial purchase will be there. And I've got a list of tenants now that will buy. So the crux of all that, I paid 140 for it. It was vacant possession by the time I got it. The rent that was coming in beforehand was it was 14% yield it was. So it was quite high, which is what I like to buy, so high yield. I then found myself 2 new tenants, and their combined rent between the 2 of them is now 22,500, which has pushed the value up to 245 grand. Wow. And all I've done is I've bought a key. That's it. I haven't spent anything apart from obviously your surveys and all that sort of stuff. Yeah. So, and I bought that in my pension as well, my SAS pension. So
Amazing.
105,000 tax free. It's nice.
One of them every year, please, or every month.
Yeah, look, that's a lot. I mean, I was told by Natasha, the owner of NCRE as well. She went, "Mark, it's a good one. It is a good one." Well before I found the new tenants, she went, "Believe me, it's a good one." So
the power of commercial property.
I like it. I think it's really good. I enjoy it as well. That's the key. So going back to what we just said, you've got to have a passion for what you're doing. I have a huge passion for supporting families. I have a huge passion for my property networking group, and I'm really passionate about commercial. I just don't have enough hours in the day to do all 3. But hey-ho.
There we go. Good stuff. Well, very good actually. I might have to get into commercial property by the sounds of it.
Yeah, definitely. I can help you with that.
Good stuff. Cheers, Mark. Right. So in terms of if people want to get involved in anything that you've got going on, from the homeless side to the commercial conversion, or not conversion, sorry, but the commercial properties, how can they go about getting in touch?
Phone number? Do we want to put that on there or not?
Can do, yeah.
We can.
Phone number, yeah.
07739 457 341.
There we go. No cold calls.
No cold calls, please. My email address for my commercial is mark@mrbproperty.co.uk.
Cool.
And for the homeless, it's mark@SureStayGroup.co.uk. My socials, I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, and Facebook as well. But I'll drop all those in as well.
Great stuff. And you say as well you're doing a sleep out.
I am.
For the homeless as well.
I am. I've a shout out to Liz Bates, and she's connected me with some really, really good people recently as well. And she's put me in touch with somebody, and I'm doing a sleep out on the 25th of November at Lord's Cricket Ground, of which I need to raise some funds for it. So anybody that wants to sponsor me, then please do. Also in the network group, obviously I'm going to be raising funds there as well. So it's going to be a sleep out overnight with some chief executives. So
amazing, great stuff.
Also to see how they live as well, because I mean, as I said earlier on, I've given out provisions in Wolverhampton when I was with the homeless outreach in Wolverhampton, and it's horrible. And I was only doing that for like 3 hours. But then I was getting in my car at 10 o'clock of the night time. Then I was going home and getting me a nice warm bed. Those people weren't. I did my bit for 3 hours, but that 3 hours is nothing when you have to sleep out in it. So wish me luck. If you've got any spare socks and some gloves, I could do with them.
I'll have a route around the drawers.
Marvellous.
Great stuff. Well, thank you very much for coming on today, Mark. It's been a pleasure.
No problem. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
So hopefully you've taken some value from this episode. Of course, if you want to reach out to Mark, maybe it's worth putting some money into the kitty to obviously go towards the sleep out for the homeless. Then he might be able to give you some information on obviously helping the homeless and also investing in commercial property as well. So again, if you're listening to the audio version, please do leave a review. And if you're listening on YouTube, please do like and subscribe. As always, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again. Take care.